What's up, everybody? Unrested again with the magical power to amaze you with my answers to all your questions. Let's get started on JFAQ. Also, I will be drinking another Chuhai as I do this because I'm unrested. I do what I want. I'm the rock star, not you. Adrian starts us off here. Let's get started with him. He said, I know you mentioned this before, that Youchien, it may be harder to get a job if you are overweight. How common is this with other language teaching jobs? How would you say Japan views body image with regards to gaijin? That's a good question, Adrian. Yeah, I would say what you would deal with a lot would be those kind of jobs in which you need to be very active. For example, hoikuen, youchien jobs. Sorry, but they are going to look for someone who seems to be in pretty good shape, because let's be honest, you need to be in pretty good shape to not only watch over a lot of kids that are small and running around, but just to assure their safety as well. For example, you got to be able to jump into a swimming pool if one of these kids is going to drown. You got to be able to run after a kid who's running towards the road. You know, it's a matter of safety. It's not a matter of, you're too damn fat, you big ugly fat gaijin. Okay. They're dealing more so with that. As for other jobs, aesthetics do come into view as far as your human body type. If a school is just looking to fill a position with a gaijin, they're not going to care so much. For example, ALT seems to just pick anybody they want. You can even be like English as a second language type person. If you speak better than the Japanese people at the school, you'll probably get hired. Whereas something like a lot of upscale ikaiwas might want a certain image, especially if they're really urbanized and, you know, they want to look classy and chic. They may also look for body types and style when you come in, especially like how well kept you are, your hairstyle and things like that. And I mean more on the conservative side. They're not looking for you to be some kind of like wild vagabond. Dennis moves on to, did you also make gaijin friends from other countries just because they are gaijin too? Well, Dennis, I'm not sure exactly what you mean. You mean like I'm walking down the street and I say, hey, gaijin, we're both white people. Well, they might be black too, so. I've never actually like run into a person on the street and suddenly become friends. I've worked with other gaijin and we become friends. I don't know if it's because we're from other countries, but it's definitely because we can converse in our own language and we can, you know, talk a lot about what we miss and wax nostalgic. Of course you're going to feel a connection to your own people back home, just like anybody would. Japanese people tend to hang out with other Asians when they go to college in America. Same thing happens here in America when people work jobs with other gaijin. Ashley says, can you talk about how trash is sorted in Japan? Oh, Ashley, I could go on for this one forever. For those of you who don't know, trash is vigorously assorted here in Japan. We are definitely a green nation when it comes to sorting our trash. The deeper you get into the city, it's not so bad as far as how many different things you have to separate. For example, I only have 4 separations. I have plastic bottles, tin cans or aluminum cans. I have I don't know, what would you call it, like the plastic bento box? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's like a plastic tray that food would come in that's disposable. Opens up like that. You've got a separate day for that too. And then the rest of the days, there's 2 other days during the week that are just burnable. And then Sunday trash is not picked up. So that's just me in the middle of the city, and like that's deep city. So deep city usually doesn't have a lot of separation. The farther you get out into the country, I mean, it can get really hardcore. I've seen up to 13 or more separations. I even watched a variety show one time where they tried to go out of their way to visit really unknown areas where they're super hardcore. And I mean, they had insane separation techniques, like up to 23 different boxes. And I remember one of them was like, you have like a Coke can or a soda bottle that you unscrew, and you've got the plastic top, and that plastic ring got thrown into a separate garbage bin. I mean, that's pretty hardcore. You know, all the more power to Japan for being green and recycling. That's cool, but if you live like a really busy lifestyle, that may not be the countryside for you, because You're going to be sorting a lot of trash. It takes a lot of time. You'd be surprised. Let's see. Stephanie says, hey Scott, I was wondering, as a Gaijin, do you have to be a Japanese citizen to own land? No, you do not. You can be a permanent resident visa. I think you can even be on a business visa and even a work visa too to own land. Oh, and definitely spouse visa, that's for sure, because I own land and I'm on a spouse visa right now, almost on a permanent visa. Make your own, oh, and okay, this question is continuing, and make your own food garden and raise small animals such as chickens or goats. I think what you're talking about is farming. I think if you get into farming, you would have to apply for certain licenses that would allow you to have that, just like any country. If you were on a spouse visa, obviously not a work visa, if you were on a spouse visa, a permanent resident visa, or a business visa, you could possibly do all of that, I imagine. But I also imagine you need special licenses. I have never owned a goat or a chicken in Japan, so I won't be able to tell you the exact process for that. I apologize. James says, is your wife gorgeous? Of course she's gorgeous. She's my wife. How, you know, what am I gonna be like? No. How can I compare my wife to... Okay, let's say, do you know the talento Haruka? Haruka, look up Haruka right now. Talento or actress Haruka. She looks a lot like her. About the same beauty. Maybe my wife's a little bit more beautiful though, actually. He says, sorry, I imagine she is. You are correct. She is gorgeous. Of course. And how do you get around the Japanese mentality? Sorry, I don't know the word, but I mean when you say to someone that they are pretty and they always reject your compliments. Okay, this is true. What James is talking about is true. I guess it's, I don't know if there's a Japanese word for it. There probably is. But it's a mentality of being humble is what he's talking about. And that is pretty prolific in Japan. I mean, it happens quite a bit. People tend to be like, Kazukashi, ya, zenzen, you know, you get to hear stuff like that. And let me think, what is the best way that I get around stuff like that? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you, James. If you date a Japanese woman who has been to the western parts of the world and dealt with Gaijin before, she's going to be pretty open to receiving compliments. For example, my wife lived in America for a while. She lived in Seattle, if I'm correct. And she knows when I'm complimenting her that I'm just doing it because I love her, right? I'm not trying to like be like, yo baby, what's up? You know, you're so beautiful. Like, I really love her. I really want to let her know how I feel about her, and you gotta let a girl know you still got those butterflies in her stomach for her, man. You gotta let her know that. She's still special to you. So she's used to it. She takes the compliment. She's not like, how's the kashi, you know, like, she doesn't have that, I guess, more humble personality that tries to push the comments back. But you will run into that. How would you deal with that? I guess, you know, I've had girls in the past who say that, and they're like, yeah, you know, you can just be, you know, let it slide. Just be like, well, you are. And then just drop it. Don't keep being like, but you are, but you're so beautiful. They'll think you're like psycho, right? So just like, you know, say, well, you are, you know, and then just drop it. Let it be subtle, okay? Try to be a little more subtle with it. Don't be over the top like, your skin is so gorgeous and your face and eyes is like pine cones floating in cream cheese. Alright, Ian says, how is the accommodation of the handicap in Japan? I think that could be written a little bit different, but that's okay. In transportation, building access, and employment, Ian, I've answered this before. Japan's still got a long way to go. There's a lot of stuff with no ramps or elevators. I will say, for the blind, it's great because they do have a set of sidewalk dots, or I don't know what you would call them, bumps, that are made specifically just for blind people to get here and there. And they are everywhere. I mean, all the way down the stairs to the subway and into every building sometimes on the first floor. So I'd say they're pretty well equipped for blind people, but wheelchair people, I feel sorry for it because I push around a kid's stroller and I find it brutally impossible at times, and it must be the same for people in a wheelchair. Connor says, hey Scott, when getting a teaching job in Japan, is there any restrictions on hairstyles? Yeah, you can't be too crazy. For instance, I currently have a mohawk. Well, you gotta get rid of the mohawk, son. And I was wondering if mohawks and dreadlocks and hairstyles of that nature are accepted. Nah. I mean, like I've said before, guys, if you're professional, that's great, but no one can show that perfectly in an interview. You can do really well in an interview, but your hairstyle may still kill your chances. If you're really, really, really desperate to have that kind of hairstyle in a professional situation here in Japan, first, get rid of the hairstyle. Second, go for the interview and be professional. After, get in good with your company, make friends, let them know you're super professional, never be late for work, do your duty, grow your hair back out. You'll be fine. Alright, I'm serious. You can probably get away with it again later, after you've shown them that you're professional, and they won't judge you by your hair, they'll judge you by your performance at the job. Okay. Patrick says, I was once leaving an arcade in Akihabara. Okay, very nice area. At the very same time that some guy was trying to come in. He looked around 20. I politely stepped aside to let him in first. He eventually passed me, but not before giving me a very dirty look. To this day, I still don't know what the situation was. Was it weird to let him go first without saying anything? Or are there actually young people who secretly don't like him? For the most part, I'd say no. Young people do not hate gaijin. Young people are actually probably the most open-minded. I would say also they're the type of people who, for the most part, would be the most accepting of gaijin doing just about anything they wanted in their country. I think with the situation you're dealing with here, you've got to remember Akihabara. You know, I don't want to pick out stereotypes, but it attracts some weirdos, man. We're talking about the same area where an otaku guy showed up, stabbed 5 people after he hit a bunch of other people with a truck that he drove into the middle of Akihabara. There's gonna be some weirdos there, alright? Within every kind of clique, within every kind of group, within every kind of nerds, there are the weirdos, man, and you just encountered one. Look, I have no problem with anybody having any kind of otaku or nerdy love for anything. I mean, for Christ's sakes, I'm an RPG artist, right? But this guy was obviously the exception to the rule. He was a weirdo. You did nothing wrong, you were in the right, that guy's a fucktard. Fuck him. Alright, Joe says, how are the healthcare systems for paraplegic people, say for medical equipment, wheelchair, walkers, ramps, catheters, medications, etc.? Well, almost all that's going to be covered by the government. Here in Japan, I mean, if you're that severely crippled, the government's going to take care of almost everything. But like I said, there's still a lot of problems with being able to get around in a lot of places. Japan still kind of needs a lot of ramps and elevators and all different sorts of public transportation. My personal opinion. Let's take a look. Where else? Patrick is next. He says, hi Scott, long-time watcher. Thanks for watching for a long time. My question is about utility bills in Japan. I spent 5 winters working training employees at Tsukiji Ginza area. Hold on, his message says see more, so I have to open it up bigger. On how to test fish for salmonella and histamine and mercury rates. Yes, I speak fluent Japanese, for those who are wondering. They are wondering, Patrick, so good you said that. All my time in Japan was during the winter months, except for an emergency trip I had to make in early July. I stayed at my then-girlfriend, now wife's house, and straight blasted the slim AC unit in her shoebox apartment. I left after 12 days to head back to Hawaii. She informed me later that I ran up a $650 electric bill. Whoa, bro, how low did you set that thing? Dude, what are you doing? This leads me to question, are electric costs abnormally high in the summer? Bro, I don't know what happened, man. Like, honestly, before I met my wife, I used to live alone in one of these shoebox apartments like you're talking about, a mansion, if you will, the one-room apartment. I used to set my AC pretty low, man. I'd set it at 19. That's a crazy-ass low. And I'd freeze myself out pretty much all the time I was there. And the highest my AC bill ever was like Neiman, like about $200 or about 190 bucks in American dollars. How did you push it to $650, bro? $650, damn. The only thing I can say is if her place was really old, and there are a lot of old style apartments, tatami mat and all, the insulation is non-existent. There's none. And on top of it, it's got a lot of issues with just air seeping out all the time. You're probably dealing with something like that. And I have heard of situations where people get overcharged here in Japan, just like it's happened in America to people, so maybe that's what happened with you. 650 sounds insane though, bro. I don't know what the hell you did. How low did you have that thing, man? You gotta tell me sometime. Tell me how low you had that. Tell me in the comments, seriously, because that's astronomical. I've never heard of that. Alright, Lamaya says, hey, Scott, I was wondering if schools in Japan are left open after everyone goes home, as we see in dramas like an anime student sneak into the school at night. Yeah, they're totally left open. Unfortunately, this led to a recent problem where 2 schools got ferociously, and I do mean ferociously, vandalized by a couple of students, and they were girls. They were girls. I was really surprised to find out they were girls who did this. And the reason they did it was because they were copying a school vandalization act they saw in an anime. That's pretty crazy. Let's move on to Miranda says, who is your favorite Japanese actor and your favorite American actor? And do you think a movie starring both of them would work? Well, let's see. Japanese actor, I'd say Abe Hiroshi, and American actor, I'd say probably Edward Norton. Together in a movie. That would be pretty fucking awesome, wouldn't you think? I mean, go watch Shinzamono, and I don't know, go watch almost anything aside from Keeping the Faith, which totally fucking sucked, by Edward Norton. And I think they'd work pretty well together. They're both kind of like this majime, dry good looks type guys. Alright, Marco says, how does it feel to be a father/parent in Japan? What are the main difficulties, if any, for a gaijin as a father? I don't really deal with a lot of difficulties. Honestly, I would say being a father in Japan has made my life easier due to the fact that people don't question my morality as much as when I was a single guy with tattoos looking kind of punk rock here. I would say probably due to the fact that I have kids with me. They know I'm not going to go fucking crazy ballistic or do anything wild because I'm just a parent trying to take care of my kids. I would say it's not really too bad. Maybe, I mean, at the worst, the only thing I get is too many kawaiis for my little kids. Honestly, sometimes it's like, you know the type of guy who carries a puppy on the beach to meet girls? That's the way I feel sometimes with my son. Like, I can't believe how many girls flip out and go crazy for this kid, man. Both of my kids, actually. And, like, sometimes I have to stop and be like, oh, okay, you want to, like, touch them and pet them and hold them and squeeze them and touch their big white mochi cheeks. That's cool, whatever, but, like, maybe sometimes that's the weirdest part, is, like, just how people flip out over how much they love Hafu kids. People really love it. I mean, you know, it's got a lot of Japanese features on top of, like, the ultra white skin. That's, like, the ideal beauty in Japan here. So they get a lot of compliments. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. Can't complain about that. That's pretty cool for them. Michelle says, what are your thoughts on the French cartoonist and artist Jean-Giraud Mobius? You know, the guy's a badass. I'm sorry to hear he had died recently, back in 2012, if I'm correct. He just recently died last year. He had some awesome stuff, man. The guy is a hyper detail freak, man. He is awesome at that stuff. I love hyper detail, and that guy was a master. I'm sorry to hear he passed. Blaine says, do you listen to Bolt Thrower? Not so much. I'm not as much into that older stuff. Are there any good Japanese metal bands you can recommend? Baby metal? Let's take a look. Zoe says, are the beaches a pretty popular spot during the summer in your area? Well, Osaka is landlocked, so not so much. Yeah, but, you know, the connecting prefectures that have beaches, they're still pretty popular, of course. The only thing I would say, man, if you go to the beach here, just get ready for big-ass crowds. And I mean neck to neck. You're going to be, you know, sharing a blanket almost next to the person. And, I mean, it's super hot from actual literal body heat on the beach of so many people being there, and it's a bit dirty because people leave their trash sometimes, and that's kind of gross. So, I mean, just be ready for that. It is insane crowded. There's not an inch of freaking white sand. Let's see. Zane says, have you ever been to see Yabusame? I have not been to Yabusame. Those of you who don't know, Yabusame is shooting an arrow while on horseback. Now, many of you might know that shooting arrows in Japan is actually a professional sport. It is in the Olympics, and it is something they're very badass at. But the next level up, or a more difficult situation, is getting into the Yabusame, as this guy is talking about right here, and that is shooting the arrow actually off the horse's back while riding. And that is hardcore if you can do that. I have never seen it. It's not in my area. Unfortunately, the closest thing I have to my area is the antler cutting in Nara. So this is not something that's held here. I would love to see it. He says, do you know if there's any manga based on it? Not that I know of, but that probably would make a pretty cool manga, I imagine. Andrew says, I know this has been talked about before in previous videos. Sorry to bring it up again. But let's say someone who is a licensed psychotherapist. Oh, man. Here we go. You're just building me up for a rant, aren't you here, Andrew? Okay, let me finish your question. Someone who is a licensed psychotherapist went to Japan to help those who need it, but also learned Japanese fluently to fully communicate. Would that be a good business since that type of help is needed there? Well, Andrew, when you say a licensed psychotherapist, do you mean licensed in America or another Western country? Because if you do, that means you're useless here. You need to get licensed in Japan. Any license from another country, even if you're a freaking medical doctor or a dentist, you're not gonna be able to work here without a Japanese license. I'm imagining you're not going to school all the way through their entire system to get your license here. So no, it would not be a good business because you couldn't even practice here. Even if you did go through all the tests and schools and licensing to become... My camera turned off in the middle of that. I got so angry. Look, I know your intentions are good, and I know you want to try and help people. That's awesome. I appreciate it. But I think what you're not even taking into account is the fact that you probably don't know a lot about Japanese culture. I have lived here 7 years, and there's still so much I need to learn. Like, so much. So much. Because I wasn't born here. That's why. I wasn't born here, I didn't grow up here. There's a lot I still don't know. Why do people act a certain way? I don't know, because I wasn't born here. I didn't grow up with friends, kids, learn their lifestyle as they grow up from a very small age. Do you know about this stuff? Were you born in Japan and then you moved to America? Because if that's not the situation, then you probably only have as much or less knowledge than me about Japanese culture. If you only had as much knowledge as me, such as 7 years of living here, you still would not be ready to master Japanese culture and therefore help people with their culture. You see, if you grew up in America or any other Western country, you're probably awesome and an expert at all the different psychological aspects of that culture, but you're not an expert here. That's what I'm trying to explain to people. Look, do you know what hikoshi is? Do you know what hikikomori is? Do you know what those things are? Because if you don't even know what those words are, then you don't know shit about Japanese culture, and you can't fucking help people if you don't know about their culture. Are you going to tell them about, well, in America, I would do this. Well, in Australia, I would do this. That's not going to fucking help them. God damn. Fucking, if this really is your career goal, research the fuck out of it. Research it to no goddamn end. But don't come on here and ask me, could you do this? Because the answer is you've already failed. Moving on. Chris says, I know you have already discussed tattoos in great length. Yes, I have. However, I would like to know what reacting you personally have gotten from Japanese public and businesses. Not really anything too insane. Probably the most I've ever gotten is on trains where people don't want to sit next to me, and that's about it. I mean, Most businesses, I mean, money's more important than how you look, so they're still going to do service for you and everything like that. Richard says, do you like the red cloak or the blue cloak? I'm guessing you're referring to the urban legend of Akamanto. I would tell him I don't prefer any color so that I could keep living. How is tax season done there? Taxes is pretty easy in Japan. You don't fill out a lot of forms or anything. They send you a bill, you pay it, you're done. You need to pay that bill if you want to renew your visa. If you don't, you will not be renewing your visa. Let's see. He says, do you know your own or hire or more savvy person to do them for you? Don't hire anybody to do your taxes for you in Japan. There's no point. Let's see. Joel says, I read something like 30% of marriages in Japan are arranged. After learning this, I asked a few of my Japanese friends, and it turns out a few of them actually are in this situation. To my surprise, they never seem to oppose such a marriage, mainly because of the respect for their family/traditions. Is it really such an accepted thing in modern Japan? You know, obviously this used to be very popular back in old school Japan. And strangely enough, I've read recently that this is making a new rising in Japan, and it's starting to become popular again because, unfortunately, what the problem is people are just too damn busy to meet a mate. It's not that they want to actually have their parents hook them up, it's that they don't even have time to find someone to hook them up with. And if their parents go out of their way, really find someone, search for someone they think is good for them, they meet them, they don't force them, they don't say, well, guess what, this is who you're marrying, you don't have a choice. They say, look, why don't you just try it out? We met their parents, they're really nice. Go date their daughter for one date. If it totally sucks, say no. Alright, that's more the way it happens, not like, your destiny is you must marry the empress. You know, it's not like some kind of crazy ass movie. They meet the person, if they like it, you know, it's kind of a compa situation. They date them, they say, hey, guess what, this is working out really well. I will say one thing that does happen is they date very briefly. It's not like, well, we'll date for a few years and see how it works out. They date for like a couple months at most, and then they're married. Do those marriages actually work out? I don't have any statistics to back anything else up. I can't say yes or no. I would say for the most part, it's more of a business situation when that happens, and a lot of the time the husband's working a ton, they barely see each other anyway, and if it's really going to work out, you're going to find out when the guy retires, and if they can live together, then yes, it works. Alright, good question there. Let's move on to Peter, who says, who are some of Osaka's hometown heroes? If I were to think of Osaka's hometown heroes, if I were just to like ask a random person on the street that was Japanese, of course, I don't know. I wouldn't say these are all heroes, but at least noted around all of Japan that people would recognize the name if I said them. For example, what's his name? Konpei Hazama, if I'm correct, the comedian, who is kind of like an old dude now, pretty super old. He likes to draw like the fake mustache on his nose and do the big crazy, you know, wigs and stuff. He's ancient now, dude. That guy, I don't know, how old is that guy, like 1,000? And he's a famous comedian from Japan. One that's unfortunately dead now, Miyako Chocho, or you can reverse that if you want to know the first name. She's a dead comedian, a woman comedian, who was very famous from Osaka. And of course, the notorious, the infamous person we all know is Hashimoto, our asshole mayor, who can go die 1,000 deaths for all I care. He sucks. Those are probably like the most well-known people all around Japan as far as from Osaka. John says, who are your favorite K-pop groups, and is K-pop popular in Japan as it is in Korea? Well, obviously in Korea, K-pop is definitely more popular, but it is still popular here in Japan due to the fact that most of those groups can speak and sing perfectly in Japanese. Personally, my favorite would probably be Girls' Generation, Kara, 4 Minute, and what's it called? Mise. And you're going to notice they're all girls groups. Well, there's a reason for that. I wouldn't say the music is really the best, but damn them some fine women. Let's see, Kenichi says, hi, Scott, this is the first time for me to put a question Is your son going to a regular elementary school after kindergarten, or most likely a Japanese school? That's a good question. We plan on sending him to a very difficult Japanese elementary school here in Tanoji, and we want to send him there, but it's not 100% assured that he will go there because he needs to actually take a very difficult test to get through. If he passes that test, he will be going there, and if he doesn't pass, then I'm going to send him to an international school. It is a brutal test, and he will definitely still learn English at that school, even though it's not international because it has such high standards. I'm not going to say the school's name because I don't want people to know where my son goes to school. Carl says, I know you've said this before, that you're not really into sports, but I was wondering if you knew what's available for adult sports and activities in your area. I do not know. If you are interested in what is popular or being played or active in your area, you need to go to your ward office. There will be sign-up boards, bulletin boards. I don't know which floor it'll be on because every ward office is built totally differently. Sign up for something, check it out. Gaijin are almost always 100% allowed, even if it's a total Japanese sport. Get involved, volunteer, help out, learn the language. You can come in there with probably zero Japanese and people will work with you. Just, you know, give it a chance, take a look. All right. Justin says, is this the real life or is this just fantasy? This is the real life, bro. You need to get with it, man. My question is, have you read any Jun Ichiro Tanizaki, Edogawa Rampo, or Yukio Mishima? Okay, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, Justin. The only name I recognize there is Edogawa Rampo, and yes, I have read. Alright, Miranda Peller says, I know this may be a sadder note, but what do you do with your pets when they pass away? In America, we have yards and even pet cemeteries. Pet cemetery! I probably shouldn't use that voice, this is a sad topic. Here in Japan, a lot of people might not know it, but fetuses, sorry if that's a touchy subject, fetuses that are unborn and animals get a whole full-scale human funeral, and we respect them quite a bit. We put them into the same pyre that you would have for a natural human, what would you call it, cremation. We pull them out, we have the bones, and we put them into the vase just like you would in a natural Japanese funeral. We then take the vase and keep the parts of the bones that we want, set it up usually next to a picture or memorial in our own house, and keep that there forever. We pay a lot of respect to that. You'd be surprised. It's quite a bit more than what you would do in America. Ray says, uh-oh, my camera's in the way of this question. Ray says, I know that you have talked about this topic, but I heard that radiation has continued to leak from the Fukushima plant for the last 2 years. Yeah. Obviously you must be concerned, but what specific worries do you have about this? Well, I don't think you might not understand the fact that I live in Osaka, which is over 400 miles away from Fukushima, and the fact that radiation doesn't leak 400 miles. You know, my biggest concern would be for the people who live anywhere close to that, and the people who have not got repaid for the government's foul up and you know, the electric companies screwing up their living situation and all the improper things that have been done with all the money given to them. I'm actually quite angry about that. I'm angry at the government for not taking care of those people. It's no different than how the American government handled Katrina. They're assholes, they're greedy, and they're not taking care of those people. I would say that's my biggest concern. For myself, my kids, my family, we're okay, man. We live in Osaka. Take a look at a map sometime. We're really far away from that. Oh, and Ali, you are the last question. I've even refreshed the page, and you are the last question. Hold on, let me move up the whole thing here so we can get your question in there. Alright, Ali says, I don't know if someone has asked this before, but I'm going to do my master's degree there in Japanese and not English. What level do I need to do in order to take a test like the GRE or the GMAT and that type of stuff like North America? You're going to do, okay, You're gonna do all that same stuff here in Japan in Japanese, and you're asking me what level you need. So do you speak Japanese yet? Because if you don't speak Japanese yet, you're in a lot of trouble. To do things like the GRE or the GMAT in Japanese, which I'm not sure Japan has those, but if they do, you would have to be a native level speaker almost. You would have to be really damn fluent. I would say the minimum Japanese kanji you would have to know is like 2,000 kanji. If you have not already started studying that kanji, you need to start like now. Ali, I worry for you. Okay guys, I'm a little bit buzzed by the end of this one. Sorry if my answers are a little out there, but hey, it's 100% true because alcohol makes you talk the truth. I promised myself I wouldn't cry. Okay, yeah, totally finished. Glad I got through this one. Guys, I'm gonna go ahead and hit up the board with a new introduction video. On top of that, I'd like it if everyone could please steer their questions to the fan page. Guys, I am still getting PMs and messages on my personal website for questions that are on JFAQ. I'm not going to answer them there. Don't send me questions on YouTube. Don't send me questions on the comments. Don't send me questions on my personal website. Don't send them to me on the wall on my personal website. Send them to the fan page. I got to keep them organized because there's so many, okay? This was like a really short time. This was like 2 hours worth of questions, and it's like a bunch. Over an hour probably almost. So just think about that when I'm trying to organize these. Help me out just a little bit. I want to help you too, but you got to help me back. Alright, until next time, I'm Unrested. This is JFAQ. I will see you again.